Alright, so I finally got to Master 1. It took a lot longer than I would have liked to. Some things came up IRL, though that's neither here nor there. But when I actually did get a chance to play, Climb wasn't so bad at all. Because I was mainly playing Voiceless Voice, and Voiceless Voice I think is positioned very well in this format. It's actually I think one of the best picks in this meta right now. And I'll mainly discuss, why I think Voiceless Voice is such a good deck this format, and like less so on the deck list itself, because let's be honest here, Voiceless deck lists are like 90% solved. The ratios that you have to run with for the engine cards, they are what they are. Like there's really not much you can do to adjust it. Like, oh what, I'm gonna run 3 barrier, 3 low, 3 diviner. Oh man, that's groundbreaking stuff. But yeah, so Voiceless Voice. First of all, there seems to be some misconceptions out there still about Voiceless Voice, that it's somehow not a good deck and that it's like weak or something, which, I mean, you don't have to take this up with me, but there are several people, in the top 10 rated right now playing Voiceless Voice. And the reason they're doing that is because this deck is a good pick for this format. Namely, against a Tenpai matchup, this is one of the decks that has one of the best Tenpai matchups in the game. And the way the type of deck that Tenpai is, which is just a 1-card starter deck that runs tons of non-engine, Voiceless Voice has a very good matchup against decks that rely on non-engine, basically, because whether it's Handtraps or board breakers. So Handtraps, Voiceless Voice is one of the best decks at playing through Handtraps. It's like you'll see in the replays, I play through 2 to 3 Handtraps regularly, and I still end up on a board that's strong enough to stop Tenpai from killing me. And reason is, this deck has so much engine, and each additional engine piece you have in your hand just lets you play through another Handtrap. Like your diviner gets hit by Handtrap. Well, okay, well I have Saphira. First of all, Saphira and pre-prep can already search Saravis, so that already nullifies half the Handtraps that you're gonna have to play against, which are like impermanent Veilers, which like basically do nothing against you most of the time. And then anytime you resolve one of your cards, like Barrier or Pre-Pep or Saphira, you're getting essentially 2 extra cards, like in card advantage and like engine to play through more Handtraps. So you're always winning. You're always like trading. You're trading up against your opponent's Handtraps. Also, you're forcing your opponent to use them at inopportune times, right? Like, for example, you Ritual Summon Skull Guardian with a low coming back, your opponent's like, the only thing that I can Handtrap now at this point is the Skull Guardian, because if I don't, then the low's going to come back and the Skull Guardian on the gate is going to be live. So I have to use the Handtrap right now, and the Skull Guardian, using a Handtrap on the Skull Guardian is like one of the... Like, if you have a low coming back to place like a barrier or like another spell and trap, like the Skull Guardian is the least of your worries. But it's also the only thing that you can Handtrap, otherwise your Handtraps are going to be dead because the Omni Negate is going to be alive. So, stuff like that. Hard, Trias Hierarcha, namely a card that you send off the Diviner, but if you hard draw this, your opponent's going to be tight because they're going to try to Handtrap your low, and then you're going to be like, oh, psych, sack my low, dodge your imperm, go next. Yeah, and also... Nadir having barrier up also, turns off targeting. If their opponent wants to hold off on the Handtraps later in the turn, well, they can't. They don't really have an option to do that. Nadir Servant, craziest card. This card gets you 4 cards in terms of like card advantage when it resolves. So like if your opponent burns all your Handtraps early on your plays, like your lows and stuff like that, then the Nadir Servant just blows them out, like just blows your opponent out of the water in like terms of card advantage. And yeah, and even in terms of, so yeah, Tenpai, the builds that run tons of Handtraps, you usually have a good matchup against them, just mathematically. And even against board breakers, so obviously, if your opponent opens 3 board breakers plus full combo, like, you are probably going to lose against Tenpai, but I mean, at that point, literally every deck is, besides the ones that are Protoss locking, or like Nemesis. What's that card called? Escados thing, like floodgating Tenpai. Outside of the decks that literally floodgate Tenpai out, like every deck is gonna lose to a combination of 3 board breakers plus fucking Sang and Kaima, right? Like that's just not realistic. But in terms of if they have 2 or less board breakers, Voiceless Voice is one of the decks that's best equipped to handle board breakers, because it's one of the few decks in the meta that it actually puts apart negates. mainly, Scar Guardian and stuff like Pendulum Grasp. Like U-Bell puts up 0 spell negates, Fire King Snake Eyes puts up 0 spell negates. They just have to eat the board breakers that are thrown at them whenever Tenpai draws into them. Here, you actually have counterplay to them. Like, most of the time, you're going to end on, the Skull Guardian low plus barrier, plus a Pendulum Grasp that's either on the field already that you ritual summoned, or it's coming the moment they summon something off the blessing. And that's a starting point. At the starting point, you have an on negate and a spell negate. So that already kind of handles 2 board breakers versus Tenpai already. Not to mention that Pendulum Grasp, whenever you use Pendulum Grasp to negate, it summons out Meteor Burst. And if they can't out this Meteor Burst, they lose the game. And it's not so easy to out the Meteor Burst after they've already expended, a couple of their spells and board breakers on your board, trying to go through your 2 negates. And then afterwards, the Meteor Burst comes out, and then the Meteor Burst still cannot be run over because you have Barrier up with low plus Skull Guardian. So yeah, it's actually like you also can very easily later your interruptions, which again will show itself in the replays. But for example, you can have like a Skull Guardian up and then negate with the Skull Guardian, and then at any point you can hold off on using your blessing until after you use your Skull Guardian negate. And then if you do that, then you can summon your Pendulum Grasp later, still have the negate up, and then that way you stagger the timing of when your negates are on the board, so your opponent can't just like droplet send 3 and get rid of everything, because your negates are hitting the field at different times. And also like the low coming back, getting the Radiance as a trap cards, so as an additional interruption afterwards. And yeah, also the boards that Voiceless Voice makes are no jokes. Like people's also meme that like Voiceless Voice boards are like quite weak, and this deck is like a low ceiling deck, which, I mean, sure, if you want to compare this to U-Bell, yes, I guess the end boards that Voiceless Voice makes are a bit weaker than U-Bell, but that goes for 99% of the decks in the game. But you'll see, like, again, in the gameplays and the replay that I'm going to show you, I've had hands where I ended on literally 6, 7+ interruptions that are all with staggered interruptions that play around multiple board breakers, which is something you can very easily do. If your opponent doesn't want to hand trap you, and you open the full ended hand, well, you can convert that into like multiple negates on field, plus all 3 of the traps. So now you have disruption in your front row, you have disruption from your monsters, you have disruption from your back row, you have disruptions even in grave sometimes. So it's like very hard for your opponent to deal with. It's like very comprehensive boards, and these boards, your opponent is not going to break them if you get to that point. So yeah, it's low ceiling, whatever. Say what you want about this deck. This deck puts up a strong enough board so where Tenpai cannot kill you through them, which, in my opinion, if you can put up a board that's strong enough to where even Tenpai can't beat you, well, personally I think that's strong enough. But yeah, that's basically my experience with this deck, and why, like, I have Tenpai, I am farming Tenpai left and right. I have like a over 70+% win rate versus Tenpai, and the games that I lose are the games where I brick or where I open like really bad hands with only 1 starter, which gets hit by 1 hand tap. So like those are the games where I'm not losing just to Tenpai if I draw those hands, right? Like I'm losing to literally any deck that draws 1 Infirm. But for the decks where I actually do get to play, Tenpai doesn't stand a chance. So yeah, I guess we can go over some of the decklist choices, although, I mean, again, as I said, the engine is solved. Like 3 Diviner, 3 Low, 3 Saphira, 2 Skull Guardian, 1 Saravis, 1 Pendulum Grasp now because Tenpai's in the meta, 3 Prep, 2 Prayers, 3 Barrier, 1 Blessing, 1 Radiance, 1 Saravis. I'm pretty sure every single Voiceless Voice deck can run these cards. Like these are like non-negotiable ratios. Okay, there's one thing that maybe not every Voiceless Voice deck runs, which is Nadir Servant. You see some builds running pots in place of the Nadir, like Prosperity and Extravagance, which is completely fine. You can run pots instead. This is like the most flexible slot in the deck. I personally think that Nadir Servant is just, honestly, it's one of the strongest cards in this deck, and I can see myself maybe running pots in the future, like Extravagance and Prosperity, but I would run those in addition to Nadir Servant. I would not cut those to run. I would not cut Nadir Servant in order to run pots. Like, I would run Nadir Servant and no pots, or Nadir Servant and pots, but I would never not run this. Well, I would never run pots over Nadir Servant, because this is crazy. Like, this gets you literally a +4 when you resolve it. Okay, you send Garura, and then you draw a card, add Maximus. Maximus summons, then Maximus you will send Arclight plus Ferrojeet, so that gets you a search of a ritual monster or a prayers if you need another ritual summon this turn, and it gets you another draw with the Ferrojeet. You know, you put back the worst card in your hand, which is, for me, it's usually Driver that I'm putting back, because I always see this card, and that's basically 2 draws plus a search plus Dogmatic and Maximus is a level 8 light monster. So this, you get a free material for your ritual. So the ritual monster or the ritual spell that you searched off of the Herald from the Maximus, you can use immediately, because this Maximus fulfills the entire requirement for a ritual summon. Like, I'm pretty sure I won every single game where I resolved Nadir Servant. Also, unlike the pots, the Nadir Servant is way better going second, because they have to negate this. If they have an Ash, they have to Ash this, which sometimes, knowing that, I'll hold this till the end, until after they most likely use their Ash. That way this will be more likely to resolve. And if this resolves, even versus an established board, you're trading with, this is trading with 2 interruptions with 1 card, at minimum, if not more, if they even let you get further, because then you can dump stuff like Entis to, you know, pop a card, get the Maximus to hand, and then they have to interact with the Maximus, or they have to interact with, I don't know, I've seen some people like called by the Entis, you know, that's like the best thing they can do. But if they don't have called by it, then the Maximus, they have to burn another interaction on the Maximus, because the Maximus is sending another Entis on them, so you're threatening popping 2 cards off the one Nadir Servant into an established board. So yeah, this is very good going second, very good going first. So that's why I'm still including this. Even it makes up for the times where you hard draw Maximus, which it's honestly not even bad. It's really only kind of mediocre if you draw Maximus plus Nadir Servant. But even if you draw Maximus, you can easily make it live. Just go Linkaribo into like Secure Gargant, and then you have the Linkaribo engrave, and then you make your Maximus live that way. You can still summon it out of your hand. It's not the worst, right? Like you can definitely, if you hard draw this, you can definitely still get it out of your hand. And yeah, the Nod Engine, the Maxi Imperm or Maxi Ash. I put in Ghost Ogre because I think it's generally the best against Tenpai-ish. Although maybe you don't even need this because the Tenpai matchup is so good already. Maybe there's another hand trap that would be better suited for you. Although this is good against Yubel as well, and Yubel is a harder matchup. But so it's Yubel is a much harder matchup for this deck than Tenpai is. I'll say that. And Ghost Ogre is pretty good against Yubel, I guess. Then like Imperms, also debatable if there's another hand trap to run in the slot. Gamma, though, you keep Gamma, because this is the best thing at using Gamma. So, like, a lot of decks, when they try to bait out, you know, Gamma, they're making, like, weird plays, or they're making suboptimal plays to try and bait out the Gamma, and sometimes it's even quite obvious that they're trying to bait Gamma, because it's like, why would you do this play? You know, like, Fire King, immediately using Fire King Island before normal summoning any monster, it's like, I wonder what that could be. But, again, in Voiceless Voice, it is optimal to play to bait out for your Gamma. Like, the best play you can do, like, the actual way you're supposed to play Voiceless Voice is to ritual summon without a monster on board immediately, if you have the hand that can do that. For example, you know, with Skull Guardian and Low, you don't want to normal summon Low, because that plays into a lot of hand traps. Let's say you have Low Skull Guardian and you have a way to ritual summon it, either with a Sphere Engrave or a Prayers in Hand that you got from the pre-prep, right? If you normal summon Low, that plays into Infirm, because now if they Infirm your Low, then you have to sack another. You have to have another monster in hand to sack when you ritual summon, because now the Low cannot be used as a full tribute for the Skull Guardian because it's negated. It also plays into Bestials, because if you go normal summon Low and then you sack it for Skull Guardian and then they Bestial you, then you're not going to have a Low on the field on your turn, most likely. So the most optimal way is, if you have these, is to use ritual summon first, sacking the Low in hand to summon the Skull Guardian. That way, you know, they can't, if they Infirm, they can only Infirm Skull Guardian, but the Low will still be out on the field afterwards. And also, if they have a Bestial and they Bestial the Low coming back, you can just Skull Guardian search the second Low, normal summon the Low, and you still have the Low up and Skull Guardian, so you still have the on negate, plus you get the Low still. And that obviously that plays perfectly baits out for Gamma. So you know if they have max seed, the Gamma eats it up. Also, you're going to activate Pre-Prep and Saphira first, and these are very popular Ash targets. And it's not even incorrect to Ash these because you kind of want to cut off Voiceless Voice and choke off Voiceless Voice from its resources before they get going, because if you get too many engine cards in Voiceless Voice, they're not going to stop you with Handtraps. Like that one Ash doesn't do anything. So it's actually optimal to use Ash a lot of times on the first thing that you can Ash to attempt to cut Voiceless Voice off, which obviously using Ash against Saphira and Pre-Prep plays perfectly in the Gamma as well. Also, Diviner, people have been getting smarter about this, but when you go Diviner, send Trias, and then Trias sack the Diviner, that also baits Gamma. You know, people will max C that, trying to get the 2-for-1 off of the max C, but then because the Diviner is being sacked by Trias, then you have no monster in the field, that also baits in the Gamma. So this deck, more often than not, if they have an Ash or a Maxi in hand and you have Gamma, this Gamma is going to resolve on your turn. You're going to be able to Gamma them. So yeah, this is why yeah, good card. Gamma's good card. I'm surprised they haven't hit this card yet, because it's been in so many decks, and pretty sure every majority of the topping deck lists and duelist cards have been playing Gamma. But yeah, this is what it is. The extra deck, so double Intest because you run a Nadir package. If you don't run a Nadir, you only need one Intest. But yeah, Garura for the Nadir package, one Herald, Meteor Burst for the Pendulum Graph, Omega. So Omega is like a kind of a 2-for-1. So one, it is something that gives you it's a payoff for when you summon drivers or when you summon Gamma. So it gives you something to make if you Gamma your opponent on your turn. But also it's a send off of Nadir and Maximus. So for example, usually you won't get punished for using Nadir Servant. You only really get punished in the mirror match and versus Branded. And versus Branded, they're gonna send 2 like Albaz fusions to get value out of them. You know, like probably like an Albion and a Titanic Lad. So what you do is, if you notice that you're playing against Branded, you send Omega. That way, even though they send 2 Albaz fusions to the grave to get value out of, what you do is you can simply Omega back one of the Albaz fusions, and then end phase when they use the other one, you just Skull Guardian negate the other one. That way, even though you're playing against Branded, which is a deck that's gets value out of Maximus normally, with Omega plus Skull Guardian, you can just prevent them from getting any value out of your own Maximus against Branded. So haven't really done that often. You know, haven't played against me Branded. Don't know where they all went, but yeah, Chaos Angel, Trias is a level 9, and then Low is a level 1. So there you go. Typhon, I guess I'll get to Typhon a bit later, but Linkaribo plus Secure Gardener, this is how you get the Linkaribo in the grave for, you know, Maximus, but also it gets you Secure Gardener can trigger the Blessing on your turn. This comes up in the 2-card combos where you can get both Skull Guardian plus Pendulum Graph on the field on your turn 1. IP comes up when you open Diviner. This is for the Deer Dino Mondo. I only run 1 Dino Mondo, so again, this card is very risky to go into, but if you play Pendulum Graph, there is one acceptable time where it is pretty decent to go for Dino Mondo turn 1, and that's when you have a Low plus Skull Guardian and you have a Pendulum Graph. That way you can turn the Skull Guardian and the Low, or like maybe a Saravis plus a Skull Guardian into a Dino Mondo, and that way you don't lose the Call By because you have the Pendulum Graph on the field. So that way, that's like kind of a safer way to go into Dino Mondo, because the main thing about this is you get so many decks running Call By and you get absolutely blown out by Call By on this. But if you have the Pendulum Graph, you do have negate for the Call By, so it's more acceptable there. I still don't usually go for this turn 1. This is mainly like I use as the board breaker, turn 2 and 3. But yeah, there are lines where it's more acceptable. Or like, even though you're playing against Tenpai doesn't run Call By the Grave as much as other decks, so that's another matchup. And then SP is SP. White Woman. So White Woman and Typhon kind of get lumped together, because these are there's one type of thing that Voiceless Voice does struggle against, and that's like towers-like cards, and the cards that are untargetable and undestructible. You know, so you know, stuff like Boral End, for example. A Boral End is a nightmare because you don't actually have a main deck out to get the Boral End very easily. So this is why, you know, Typhon is there, and then Underworld Goddess. You know, if you can, you know, you go for Underworld Goddess, but if you can't, you know, last resort, you use Typhon to out these type of cards, because otherwise Voiceless Voice does kind of struggle with untargetable stuff. So this is why Typhon is not a great card, but it has more uses in like Voiceless Voice than it does in other decks, you know, like Fire and Snake Eyes or like Yubel or Tenpai, for example. Like, imagine Tenpai running Typhon, right? Like that's never gonna happen. But yeah. Speaking of Tenpai, why don't we get to some of the games with this deck, and I'll show you like why I think this deck is so good. Now, for those of you who might be thinking that Voiceless Voice has kind of a low ceiling, well, I mean, compared to Yubel, sure, but if you open an all-engine hand like this in Voiceless Voice, well, look at where this leads to. So, Diviner, hard draw the Trias. I don't know how to pronounce this. Trias. Hard drawing this is broken because that means that the Diviner can send another card, and then you got Prep plus Nadir Servant, the most broken card in the deck. So here we're gonna activate Prep out of the Prayers plus Saravis, and then normal summon Diviner so we can protect the Diviner from Imperm. Send the Herald because we already have the Trias, so we can get that Skull Guardian as well, and then activate Prayers. Prayers send the Trias because the Trias, you know, we can use it from grave or hand, so we're gonna get it to the grave first by ritual summoning it. Summon the Skull Guardian, still protected from Imperm and Valor, by the way, because of the Saravis that we still have in hand. Add the Saphira, use Trias. Now you can sack the Diviner, and now the Diviner will summon out the low. At this point, I know they have no interruptions because like they literally didn't. We had no responses to anything. You know, if they had an Imperm, it doesn't matter. And if they had Ash, they would have Ashed earlier because now their Ash doesn't really do much anymore. So now we go Saphira, a place barrier, add a Pendulum Graph. We're going to use barrier. I'm going to add a blessing, activate blessing, and then so this was a misplay actually. I instinctively just made Linkuriboh with Linkuriboh when in reality I should have just straight away linked off the low and the Trias into IP. So I lost one interruption on my end board. Whoopsie. And now I'm going to add the low back to hand after placing the grave, and now I'm going to go into SP. So this SP should have been an IP. Okay, that it would have been even made this board even better. But yeah, now it's going to trigger the blessing. So now I can ritual summon the Pendulum Graph that we added earlier, and now low is going to trigger because we didn't trigger the Rise from grave. And now, after all that, after making our link to, now we can go Nadir Servant, add Dogmatica Maximus, Garua, draw a card, draw into an Ogre, summon Dogmatica Maximus. And honestly, like, I probably shouldn't even use Dogmatica Maximus effect, because the only thing I have left to send, I already went through Herald and Garura, so the only thing I can really send to get value is the Tri-Brigade Ferrigede, which will draw a card and I have to put a card back. And all of these cards are broken anyways. Like, I want to keep all these cards anyway. So, like, really, I probably just shouldn't have used its effect, because there might be a small possibility that I got punished somehow, which I almost did. They stand at a Herald, but, you know, we do have the Skull Guardian negate up, so we can just... I mean, this is pretty safe anyways, because whatever they send, we can just negate with the Skull Guardian too. And now I send Omega and Ferrigede. Ferrigede drew a second Ogre, nice, just what I needed, and Omega is engraved in case I need to shovel something that, which I really don't need to. I think I have all the resources in the world, so now we have a Skull Guardian, Pendulum Graph, so like an On-negate, a Spell Trap negate, a Spell negate, an SP Little Knight, which should have been an IP to make an SP on my opponent's turn, and then we drew like 2 cards from the Ferrigede and the Garua essentially, so we have Maxi, Ogre, and Saravis. The moment our opponent summons a monster, Blessing is going to summon the Saravis onto the low is going to summon itself back, and then the low is going to place the trap. So now then we have Saravis plus low on the field, Saravis plus Radiance on the field as well, so that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so like 6 plus 7 interruptions from Voiceless Voice, low ceiling deck, by the way. And our opponent's on liberal Voiceless Voice. So guess we know who they're voting for. That's wait, they have a Korean name. That That's a bad joke. That's a bad joke. That they are not voting for anyone. That would be illegal. Forget I said anything. And yeah, so they're gonna summon the Geek Boy, and then the Saravis, sack the low, and then the Geek Boy will add. I honestly don't know what the plan of LIBROMANCER is, by the way. I'm sorry, I haven't played that deck. And they're going to activate LIBROMANCER to continue spell to place the field spell, and they're gonna activate the field spell, and I'm like, ooh, that is a juicy Radiance. Okay, I'm gonna Radiance pop 3 because I control all 3 rituals. So I can Radiance pop 3. All right, boom. Now they're gonna summon Magician Souls, which Magician Soul is gonna send 2, which is gonna get ashed. Like, I didn't even use any of my ritual negates. I didn't even use my SP yet. Yeah, it's still got 5 more interruptions to go on my end board. That they have 3 cards left. So yeah. Here we have another 4 engine hand. So we're gonna go crazy, especially when you open a Diviner plus low. So here's one of the things that I like doing now when I open both of these. And so we're gonna prep, add prayers, and then Skull Guardian, and we're gonna lead with prayers sacking low for the Skull Guardian. So it forces them to use any possible hand trap they have now. I'm gonna use Skull Guardian plus low, and probably should have made Skull Guardian Chainlink too, because people are playing Bell now, which is something I realized midway through my climb. So yeah, get Saphira, get low barrier, we'll add a Blessing, and then Saphira I will dump to at the second prayer to add a Odd Eyes, because I hard drew the Saravis, so I can put one of the prayers back into my deck at any time, so it's fine. Now I'm gonna normal summon Diviner. Diviner is gonna send Trias, and I'm gonna send both those back, summon Saravis, activate Blessing, and then activate Odd Eyes. So this was a mistake. I should have I probably should have used the Saphira Engrave to ritual summon the Pendulum Graph. I think I might have forgore, because I used Blessing to add back the Saphira, thinking that I had already used it. But I should have ritual summoned this Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph first. Does not really matter in grand scheme of things, because I still, you still get everything, and I get this back, and I leave the Trias Engrave. So when you open both low plus Diviner, and you don't need to use the first Diviner to get to the Trias, you can actually leave you don't have to use the first Diviner to get to the low. You can actually leave the Trias Engrave, because Trias has an effect where if you tribute 2 plus fairies, you get to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So this is a non-targeting pop, since I have both Trias plus Diviner on the field right now. So it's a way to layer your interruptions. You don't have to go for like the Dynamundo, or I could have made an IP with this line too, but then I would have used probably the Saravis, and the Saravis summoning out the Ritual Saravis is also a decent form of interruption too. And like this is like still 5-ish, 1, 2, 3, 4, summoning back the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph, which will summon back the low, which will get the Radiance, so 5, 6. There's like a 5, 6 interruption board still off of all that, and plays around board breakers pretty decently. Our opponent's on Infernoids, and on the summon of Decatron, I'm gonna use Blessing to summon the Pendulum Graph that I probably should have ritual summoned earlier, but it's fine, because I'll just sack the low here anyways, and then summon the Pendulum Graph out, and then honestly probably should have sacked the Diviner. That was well, no, I'm stupid. If I wanted to summon it last turn, I would have sacked the Diviner with the Pendulum Graph, because that way you could play around potentially, like, I don't know, maybe a Bistio or something, but one doesn't have a Bistio, so the low is coming back. Like last turn, if you wanted to summon Pendulum Graph, I probably would have summoned it over to the Diviner, because the Diviner would have summoned the low out of the deck anyways, and then you would have had double low on the field, so you could still get the Trias to pop 2, and then the low would still summon itself back after you use the Trias or something. So it's maybe not, but like basically there's like multiple ways to layer this board. So this is like the one way I went. So obviously we're gonna negate the Dark Fusion and summon out the Meteor Burst, which, because we're not playing as Tenpai, it's not an auto win, but still fine. And then they're gonna Void Imagination on the summon Void, on the activation of Void Imagination. Here comes the Saravis, comes the relinquished anima. Even though they can't target anything, they're gonna summon Antra, and here I'm going to just pop off the Antra. So does the Antra target? You can target. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Maybe I was no, I think I did that because I was to play around SP, because SP could have banished, like, maybe the SP would have forced the trap anyways. So maybe I should have waited for them to get the SP first, but it's fine. They're gonna attack this, which, you know, that's the #1 thing Scholar Guardian Negate is used on these days. It's tactics. So unfortunately, their last card in hand is gonna be Grass. So that was a pretty decent hand by our opponent, but they still have a few interruptions to churn through, and also, like, how are they gonna get rid of this board, right? So on the Devyati summon, the Devyati gets negated. So they lose their Devyati names. Now they're gonna go into Proxy F Magician. Boy, fans of the channel know the lore behind this card. But yeah, you're gonna go into Promethean Princess, and here's where most people don't realize that Trias is actually a actual interruption in the grave. So you can sack both Low plus Diviner to sack to pop the Promethean Princess. Most people don't expect that coming, and then you get the Low from deck anyways. So yeah, it's even in Infernoid, all gas hand revolving Grass still really struggles to break through this board, and they would have struggled to find a way to kill me anyways. And if they don't kill me, you see all the follow-up we had anyways. So yeah. Voiceless Voice is known for playing around hand traps. So this game is a key example. So gonna use Saphira, get Max Seed on the Sphere effect, not even the summon, not even the effective summon. So anyway, Gamma high, Gamma insane, because once again, Voiceless Voice always makes Gamma alive, except we get hit by the Ash Blossom. So Maxi, Ash Blossom, 60 cards by the way, 60 cards. By the way, okay. So fortunately we drew the Maximus. So this is the one time you actually want to see this card, because all I'm gonna use this for is the ritual summon for Skull Guardian. That way I don't have to summon Low from the grave and give them an extra card. I can just simply summon simply use the Magnimus. So we're going to use the Saphira to sack the Maximus, summon the Skull Guardian, and we get hit. They draw a card. We get hit by, of course, another hand trap. Three hand traps and 60 cards. How many fucking hand traps are you running in your 60 card deck? What 60 card deck even runs Valor? So anyway, that doesn't matter, because all I'm gonna do is I have the Low in hand anyways. Surprise, and I'm gonna set the Radiance instead of the Barrier, because the Barrier at this point I'm trying to fish for interruptions, and Radiance can either serve as a pop with one pop because of Skull Guardian on the field, or I could use Radiance, shuffle back the prayers, and then summon out a Saravis, and then Saravis will go back to hand to summon the actual Saravis over that interrupt that way. So I'm gonna hold this and see which one is better. And our opponent's on super heavy, so unfortunate time to be playing super heavy, because Ogre is very popular right now, and nobody is running this for super heavy. But you know, just happen to get caught in the crossfire. So yeah, what Kalshi buy. And now they're going to activate Stand Up, and then realize that Stand Up loses to the on-field Radiance. So, awesome. Managed to squeeze through 3 interruptions through 3 hand traps, 2 of them in engine. And, yeah. So, speaking of playing through hand traps, here's another one against Tenpai, since they won the coin flip and made us go first. That only means one thing. And here, we're going to Saphira, and gets ashed, which, you know, ashing the first thing against Voiceless Voice is not incorrect. However, it just does not do anything in this instance. Because now I'm going to normal summon Low, they're going to Imperm, and we hard drew the Trias. So hard drawing Trias is broken, because no one expects it. So now you can just sack the Low, and then you get hit by the Maxi, which is unfortunate. You know, it's really the third hand trap that gets you. Maxi, Ash, and Imperm. Okay, so they're going to draw one off the Trias, and here I'm going to do a different kind of play. So I'm going to set Blessing, add back Saphira, and then activate Barrier, we'll add back, we'll add a Skull Guardian, and I'm just going to set Imperm. So the idea is, I'm not going to give them any more draws, and the minute they summon a monster, we're going to summon Skull Guardian, and then Low will trigger summon that from the grave, and then Low will place the trap, Radiance. So, full, you know, all 3 Voiceless spell traps Skull Guardian low through 1 maxi draw. Now, Lightning Storm is not real, okay? They just simply will not have it. They will simply not have Duster or Lightning Storm. And, okay, so this is an interesting play. They go set 2, enter battle phase for Sangan Kaiman. Okay, I don't know what the set 2 is about, but the Sangan Kaiman, you know, they probably think they're slick, right? This is not going to work out for them. The moment they summon Chundra, okay, so the Blessing will trigger. We're going to sack the Trias for the Skull Guardian. And then the low is going to come back, and I'm going to chain block the low from, like, Bell, because I know people have been playing Bell recently for some reason in Tenpai, and we get hit by a second hash. So the 4th hand trap. The 4th hand trap. Now, the Skull Guardian literally, I mean, I don't care. The Skull Guardian was going to add, like, a ritual that I wouldn't be able to summon this turn, or, like, a Saravis, which I already am protected from targeting, so that doesn't really matter. But that was mainly just to chain block the low. So now the low comes back, and then the low will place the Radiance, and now look at this. We have 1, 2, 3 interruptions and non-targeting over through four hand traps, by the way, 4 hand traps, and they're not attacking the Chundra, and then that's easy Skull Guardian negate. And main phase 2, we're gonna pop this, and it's a prologue of the destruction. So what the fuck? Yeah. Anyways, through full interaction board through 4 hand traps. Okay, even better than the last one through 3 hand traps. Now there are quite a few Tenpai games that might go like this one. So, you know, we pre-prep. This is the standard stuff. They don't hand trap this. So then, you know, add Skull Guardian, Barrier, add low. You always want to ritual summon with the low in hand and the Skull Guardian in hand, so that way you play around a potential Bestial, and you force your opponent to only inperm on one thing, and they gamma the Skull Guardian. This is why I often like making Skull Guardian Chainlink 2 in scenarios like this, just so it baits out the interaction, because then nothing will happen to low. You won't get belled, you won't get anything like that, and sometimes they drop a Gamma or an Ogre like this for no reason, because they're a Tenpai player, and you know, why would they read cards, right? So yeah, the Skull Guardian gets hit, and then the low comes out, and now Chainlink 1 prayers and Chainlink 2 low, so the prayers are going to summon out another one, and I'm going to play around Ash this time by placing prayers as Chainlink 1, low as Chainlink 2, so they can't Ash this, and then the prayer will summon out the second Skull Guardian. Oh, look at that, look at nice Gamma. So now I'm blessing, adding back the prayer, so I can put back the prayer and the prep to summon the Saravis that I hard drew in hand anyway. So now we have all 3 hard drew the Radiance too. So now we have all 3 traps plus Saravis, low plus Skull Guardian plus plus a Maxi, and they will be getting a Saravis on their turn most likely. So yeah, Maxi gets chained with Super Poly. The Super Poly is nice, you know, that Gamma Super Poly, that average Tenpai player hand. And here comes the Mud Dragon, and I don't have a second prayer, so unfortunately, you know, I can't deal with double board breakers, I suppose, on the Skull Guardian. Not that I even have another one in deck, but I do have Radiance, so now they're gonna Sangan something, and here I'm gonna chain Radiance, or well, I'm just gonna activate Radiance, and they're gonna use Maxi, chain to the Radiance, because, you know, why not, and then they're gonna chain Mud Dragon to make it fire. I presume to make it fire, and then Radiance, I'm gonna put back the Skull Guardian and then add the Skull Guardian to hand. So this is still fine, because now at any point when they summon another monster, I will Skull Guardian use Blessing to sack the low, and then the Skull Guardian will come back, and then this low will come back, and I still have the Skull Guardian Omni Negate up, even though they super polyed it, and I had no more to summon off prayers, and I had no more prayers. But yeah, this deck is still, it's quite, Voiceless is, you know, surprisingly very resilient to board breakers. So even after getting my Skull Guardian wiped twice, we still end with you know, draw a Gamma, then Skull Guardian, sack a special Skull Guardian, summon low, and then they're going to Hydra, get the Sangan, and then, you know, we do the Skull Guardian to presumably add the Saravis to hand. Then the low comes back, and I'll place a second barrier even though it doesn't do anything. But yeah, now here's the thing. My opponent now should know that I only have an Omni Negate left. And there's a line to kill me to play around this Omni Negate completely. Okay. And I'm just gonna hold this Omni Negate to see how long I can hold it for, but in reality, if they know the line, they should kill me immediately. They should have a way to get into Biden's Dragon, into Transcendence, and then enter battle phase, activate Kaiman, and it's over, okay? So, yeah, let's see what they do, okay? They're gonna special Chandra, okay? And then they're gonna... This is how you win a lot of games against Tenpai players still, because they don't know how to play their fucking deck. And, yeah. They most of the 90% of the time they would win this game anyways, just because it's Tenpai and it doesn't matter what you're doing half the time, or what you're doing 90% of the time, you're still gonna win. But they open themselves up to getting punished by top deck Gamma off of the Maxi. Thank you. It's reinforcing the point. So yeah, now they're entering Kaiman. Imagine if they had just made the play in the Transcendence Dragon, or attempted to go fight it in the Transcendent instead, and they not leaving themselves open up to literally every single hand trap I could have drawn off of Maxi. You know, they know I'm drawing like 5 cards off Maxi. You know, what if I drew literally any hand trap? Valor, Infirm, Ogre, whatever. Yeah, it's an Ash 2. What if I drew an Ash for the Kaiman? But you know what? Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, surprisingly, their one monster they summon in the battle phase gets hand trapped after I drew 5 cards off the Maxi. So who does seen that coming? So here's the game where we win the coin flip, but we brick. This is like literally not a single card in this hand is playable. So even though we won the coin flip, in reality we're going third because our opponent gets to make the first action with an extra card in the hand. And then it has to go back to turn 3 before we actually get to play the game. So, yeah. And make things worse, they're playing Bitter's Edge. So I can't even out-brick myself with this Maxi because, well, obvious reasons. And then they're gonna activate Golgonda and then set 2. Okay, so this game is what I like to call a typical stun player. So I'm gonna draw my second Infirm and I'm gonna set both of them. Okay, and I lose this game 90% of the time, but my opponent found one line that cost them game. First of all, chicken game in stun. What in the hell is this budget Morganite? It's not even budget Morganite. It's a UR. Why is this? You're giving your opponent a chance to draw an out to your board with a free card. Sure. Okay, then they're gonna normal summon Dogmatic Glacier. I'm gonna ogre this because what the hell else am I gonna ogre? And then they're gonna. What? So okay, so first of all, I'm in their defense. This is actually a good play. Okay, I'm gonna tell you why. Because even though ogring a Dogmatic, like striking an ogre on a Dogmatic Ecclesia while you have Golgon on the field seems like one of the worst plays you can ever do. But they probably have a read that this is an Infirm. So because I ogred it because I had no use for this ogre, them striking the ogre in this window means that I can't activate the Infirm, which means I can't negate their Dogmatic Ecclesia. So that was actually a good play by them to turn on to protect their Ecclesia from Infirm, because I just haphazardly used the Ghost Ogre for no reason. But yeah, smart play by them actually. I know this looks silly, but that was the correct play if you had to read on Infirm, because now they have to add the Mac Ecclesia. And then they're gonna enter battle. And then they're gonna set in the could have set in another column. So you had the read. There's no defense for this, okay? If they had the read that one of these was an Infirm, the fact that they set their punishment in the Infirm column after they just used up their strike in the same column, it's like, what? Come on, man! I'm trying to gas you up here. You can't be doing the plays like this. So yeah, one Infirm is gonna go on the Bear's Edge. You're gonna Maxi, which I really don't give a shit about anymore after turn 2 versus stun, because I mean, what are they gonna do? Are they gonna play Bestios and stun or something? Like come on. So now I'm gonna use my own Nadir Servant. to add Maximus, send Intis. Intis gonna, I mean, whatever Intis pop is just gonna get hit by Golgana. So here I probably should have just impermed immediately. Like this was a, like just turn off both their back rows. For some reason they gave me the free imperm column on their back row, so I should have just impermed this immediately. But it doesn't end up mattering. But like in reality, like that's the correct play. So here I'm gonna send 2, and they're going to send 5 head. They don't send Intis for some reason. Interesting choice. Don't know about that. But they send Skull Knight, which is they're definitely gonna get a turn after this, right? And yeah, I'm gonna Intis. I'm gonna pop the Bear statue because I can't imperm it anymore because it's already impermed. I'm gonna add Skull Guardian, freeze prayers, sack the bottom bias Pendulum Block because it's not. This ain't the matchup where that's gonna be good against. Then summon Skull Guardian. Then Skull Guardian. It's gonna get hit by. Well, what is this strike timing? First of all, this wouldn't even have done anything because I would have just summoned the second one off prayers. But yeah, thank you for setting the punishment in the imperm column. Again, thank you. So both your back rows are turned off and your barrier statue got turned off. I used 2 imperms to turn off their entire field versus stun. That shouldn't happen. Yeah, you add low gets barrier, add Saphira, dump, add a second Skull Guardian. And I'll just tribute summon the second Skull Guardian, or set ritual summon by tributing the Maximus to summon the second Skull Guardian, and this is game. I'm gonna pop the chicken game first, and then attack over, and their Ecclesia can be destroyed by battle because the ritual summons are not from the extra deck. So fun fact. Yeah, that's I don't want to say an average stun player because that was simultaneously the best, one of the best, and one of the worst plays I've ever seen a stun player do. Alright, so this is one of the worst games I've ever played in my life. So we're going second, open Ash, Infirm, seems pretty good, right? Then our opponent goes Flashing Fire, in the main phase, by the way. They always go Flashing Fire in the main phase, you know, who needs to play around Droll and Valor, right? Yeah, summon Hugin, and then not activate Hugin's effect because they hard to bound. So I'm like, well, I guess this imperm is not really going to do much then, right? And then they Runick Summer to try to draw 2s, and then banish, you know, keep track of the banishes. I'm just going to say that right now. And then they try to draw 2, so I'm like, maybe this isn't stun, maybe this is just some Runick combo build, and they're trying to draw into like engine, so I am going to Ash that. Psych, I'm not going to Ash that, because why... You know, why should Handtraps resolve, right? Like seriously, what's the point of Handtraps if not just to get negated, right? Like clearly, that was my bad. Well, yeah, now we got 4 banish cards, and they're gonna draw 2, still not drawing the engine, so gonna pass this back to me. I draw a Gamma. This is a very good draw, because I'm going to prep and then get hit by Ash, then I'm gonna Gamma their Ash. And they have Max C there. I wouldn't, honestly, I wouldn't care too much. I would just probably enter battle phase and like we'll summon low with barrier and move on from there. But yeah, so we get the driver Gamma, and I don't run Excel or like Baron obviously in this build, so we are going to go to Mega instead, try to get the last cards out of their hand. You know, maybe they're Runicks, and yeah, there definitely are Runicks. Flashing Fire, and then Freezing Curses. They definitely are Runick cards. So now I'm going to I guess they Freezing Curses because I'd like they didn't want to get hand ripped, I suppose, so it's fine. Yeah, they're gonna draw 2 cards, and I'm gonna lose 2. I'm gonna use 3 off of the Freezing Curses and 2 off the Flashing Fire. So I'm gonna lose another 5 cards from my deck, and there goes the 1 of Saravis and the 1 of Radiance. At least I can get those back with Blessing, right? Clueless. So they're gonna draw 2 more cards. I'm gonna activate Barrier, and they drew into Tip. Didn't even hard draw. They drew into the fucking Tip. So now I lose another card off the top of my deck. And then I lose another Ash, and then they're gonna Destruction the Barrier before I even activate for 4, so now I lost the Trias and the Blessing, so I lost all my Recycling, I lost all my 1-ofs, basically. I lost the Saravis, the Radiance, the Blessing, I lost the Trias, so now this fucking Diviner does nothing, because I can't send the Trias to send with it. It's so bad. I don't have another target to make this even level 7 so that I can sack for Skull Guardian. It's awful. So now I'm going to send Herald at least Herald I can add to Saravis, and I'm going to, you know, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. We're going to hard sack the Saravis to summon the Skull Guardian. Already normal summon, so I can't do anything with this. I am going to add low for follow-up, and yeah, I'm going to enter battle phase, attack over the Hugin, and attack with Skull Guardian, and then main phase 2 we're gonna go Dino Mundo. Put that Runick Fountain back in your deck. If you want the Runick Fountain back, you're gonna have to discard a card for it, and I put the Strava's deck because I desperately need to put cards back into my deck. You know, that's why the Omega there is actually good for me because I can use Omega to recycle more cards. The very few cards I have remaining. Somebody once said the banishes from Runick cards never matter. Well, it's the end of turn. It's the end of my first turn. I only have 20 cards left in my deck. I got 14 of my cards banned. I literally got like a third of my deck banished in one fucking turn. Very, very nice card design, Konami. And unfortunately, my opponent, like, they're on 2 cards of Runick, so at the very least, Runick is not like the very strong deck, especially in Master Duel with all the hits. So like, it's not like they can really do anything. It's just hella annoying that all this happened. So yeah, they're gonna summon Hugin. You can discard a card. You feel free. They probably should not have even discarded this card. Like, discarding Sprite Red was a mistake because they were just gonna add Fountain, and I'm gonna let that Fountain go because Fountain with 0 Runick cards is like literally nothing. And if they had the Sprite Red, they could have actually potentially extended past my Infern. But now the only play they have is to go into Gigantic, which they could have gone to Elf, I guess, but Elf would have also gone Infern, then they would have had one red for my turn as a disruption. Not really gonna cut it, and yeah, it's gonna go pass back to me. I Dino Mundo, summon back the Skull Guardian. Because I already have the low in hand, so I can normal summon the low and then go from there and top deck a Saphira. So I'm gonna low, set my last barrier. I think this is my last barrier, so because this was literally the only continuous Voiceless Voice spell left in my deck. And then add the second Saphira, because I had what else am I gonna fucking add, bro? My whole engine vanished, so I'm gonna Omega put back the prayer so I can Saphira dump the prayer, have the Pendulum Grab, and then Saphira sack the low and summon the Pendulum Grab. And you might be wondering why I didn't get the Skull Guardian to go for game. Well, this is why I didn't get the second Skull Guardian to go for game. Man, I love fucking Runick, bro. Yeah, 900. Also, it wouldn't have even been game because the Gigantic got its attack points back, so it's at 32. But we have an Omnigate and a Spell Negate versus 2 Runick cards. I'm not really stressing there. Yeah, activate and pass. So. Yeah, I was almost a disaster. That was almost a game where neither of us got to play the game. Yeah, I think I might have forgotten to mention this earlier, but Max C, the Voiceless Voice is one of the best decks into Max C among the decks that actually special summon. So oftentimes, you know, 1, if not at most 2 draws off of Max C, you can end on 2 plus interruptions. You know, Skull Guardian low plus any number of Voiceless Voice spell traps, and as you saw in the replays, a Blessing on the field, and the Blessing on the field is going to ritual summon another one on your opponent's turn to get even more interruptions, while giving your opponent minimal maxi draws. And even other turn ending hand traps, you know, like Shifter. This deck can easily put up the same board through a Shifter as well, which is even worse for your opponent, because at that point they don't even get the maxi draws, they just hand it themselves for 1 while you still have Omni Negate plus Radiance or more up. And then, Blessing is broken because Blessing can add back from the banish too, so you don't even lose all your resources. You can add your resources back and it passes back to you. So yeah, this is one of the more resilient decks going first, and obviously in a meta where a third of your matches are going to be against a deck that makes you go first, being one of the best decks in the meta at going first is definitely an advantage. So yeah, if you happen to own this deck, I know this deck is expensive right now, so it's not realistic to make this if you don't already have these cards. But if you have these cards and you haven't dismantled them yet, or if you are a Voiceless Voice player, please, and you're sick of Tenpai, just throw this, try this deck out for a spin. The people in higher rating have also been doing that, and they've been doing very well with this deck. So yeah.